Yeah. So now in this case, if you're taking like two arguments and I'm doing some operation and you're trying to ask the end result, say result equal to. So in this case, see here, what will happen? You get the result was printed, but you're not seeing anything, So let's say I'm this time assigning this result to something, the same function definition, but instead of just consuming directly, so I'm just assigning to something and getting the result. Say instead of executing like this, I'm commenting and assigning. So till now you are just creating a function and making a call, but you are not making a call and getting the end result till now. So for the first time, I'm assigning the result to something. So as you didn't return anything, so you will get a null, because none is the default type that we'll have. Then in this case, if you are doing like nothing, you are getting that result. What if you place intentionally like a return? Say just a return I placed. Even if I place return also or don't place return also, it makes the same. Or if you place a return, say none, so that also it will give the same thing. Rather, instead of return, and if I do something like say here, instead of a return a none, I do a return result. Now we see what will happen. The result is different, right? You see, this time when I place the return as a result, I'm getting the result as integer, because you see it is printing and also giving the result. So what if this time you are not printing? Observe the difference. Within the function, if you are printing, so you need not get outside. If you just want something to be happened and printing, you can use a print within it. But if you want the end result and you want to work with that variable, you return them and assign to something and get it. Observe, see here, this time the result is not printing and it is coming here. And here you are making using of whatever you want. So not only this, if you want to see, so the most important point is whatever you are doing. So even if you have like multiple results, you will get only first result. So because say like I have a return, this time return. Uh, so instead of that, I did a return true, and also immediately so return something. Say something I did return. Now what will I get when I print the answer? I will get integer only. So because so return is the left. By execution stops at the first return. Execution stops at the first return. Once a return is encountered, that is the last statement of execution. Say if I am commenting this one, so then it will return true, because that is the first one, right? And if I take the same example and if I comment this true, then I'll get something. Means though you process something, you are not using that variable. Even if you are not using variables, Python will not throw anything. So not only that, now very, very interesting point. So unlike the previous one, say here, I'm doing something. Sometimes we unfortunately, without knowing, we'll place a comma at the end. If I place a comma at the end, did you understand what happened? I told any time when there is a comma at the end, very, very careful, be careful. So it creates a lot of things. So in the same fashion, if I place like a tuple, then it's fine. If I place like a tuple, then it is clear for us to understand. But if you don't place a braces also, if there is a just comma, in that case also it's treated like a tuple. So like this, say apart from that, if I'm passing, say like, two values, 100.0. If I pass, now instead of one value, I am passing two values. See, when I'm passing two values, it is getting a tuple of two values. So, and like coming to one more thing, interesting thing. Whenever you're passing like two values, so instead of assigning to a single value, I can assign the result to two things. So say answer 1, comma answer 2. I am taking like two things. Now I can individually ask, hey, what is ANS1, ANS1, and ANS2. I can ask specifically. You see now what happened? Whenever you are getting two values, you can assign to two variables. This is called as unpacking. Hope you remember. So like that, if you are getting three values, you can assign to three variables. If you are getting four values, you can assign to four variables, like that. So like that, any data type. Let's say this time you are getting the values. Say I'm not doing anything, just like returning. Return, say value. Say I'm doing like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like that. So this time, if you are giving 8 values and if you are trying to assign, what it is saying, hey, I got too many values. I don't know to whom to assign. I thought like only 2 values will come. Suddenly these many values came. So I don't know to whom to assign. So unpacking also needs some kind of way. For that, in Python 3, they introduced something very interesting. So if you use something called a star, if I use something called a star, did you see the difference between up and other? For the second value, I told a star, means asterisk. Now we see what will happen. So the first value was assigned to 1 and all the remaining values were assigned to the second one. Did you see like a list? So this is called as unpacking, asymmetric. Asymmetric unpacking. Asymmetric unpacking. In asymmetric unpacking, the beauty is that what are the things you give, it will give based upon that. What if I place the star to the first one? So means like all should not have, So if I place star to the first one, all the values gone to the first one, the last one got one value. Did you see? It is so intelligent enough. This is called as unpacking. And also one more interesting point. What if I have, say, ANS, say ANS star. So, and like I got like ANS 3, something like 3 variables I have now. Now you see here, if I ask, hey, what is the value of this ANS 3? Did you notice that? The first value was given to the first one, last value was given to the last one, and all the middle values were going to the middle one. So how we are getting like a list? Did you tell that it should be a list or a tuple? So generally for tuple only we call it as an unpacking. Not only for tuple, for any data type we have unpacking. This concept of getting the things based upon the values in runtime is called as the unpacking. Hope it's clear, everyone. So we have done these kind of things earlier also. When you go for a div mode function, it will give 2 values. So then like you can assign to 2 variables, right? Or like 3 values, like that you can assign many times. Next, going further. So apart from this, one more interesting function. If you have some values and if you want to add them, that's what we had started like this. Say definition, addition of, say like n1, comma n2. If you are given 2 values and you can say n1 plus n2. So then this function, you can do addition of say, so 11, 22. If I give, I'll get it. Similarly, if I want for 3 values, so I should get like, n3 and I need to do like n3. So I need to pass the 3 values. I passed, it will work. Like that, if any number of values, if you want to work. So that's where I told we have a built-in function called as sum, which can be passed. Sum is a built-in function which will take anything and it will work, right? So for the sum built-in function, same like this, if you pass 11, 22 and 33, it will throw an error. So earlier also I showed you. Now I'm showing with exact values. The sum built-in function expects the first value to be like an iterable. Whether you give like a list or a sum tuple or so any iterable, it will work. Means if I say like print of f of say is equal to, you see here first one it is a list, second one is it is like a tuple, say I'm taking like once, one, and similarly in the third case, I'm taking like a set. You see now, in all the three things it worked, some, but individually if you give, it will not work. So earlier I showed you how to add an extra values to it and get the results also. So it will work with like, when you give an extra offset along with these values, then also it will work. That's what I showed you at the time. So not only this, what if I give, there is a interesting interview question it was, what if I give a dictionary to a sum? Will it work first of all? If it works, how it works? Now, the question is, whenever you are iterating over a dictionary, did I tell one thing earlier? When you loop on a dictionary, by default, you get the keys, right? So by default, when you loop on a dictionary, you will get only the keys, right? So that's what I told you. If you want to just give a check, you can check it. So if I take a dictionary and I do a for loop on it, say for each in so and so, so this is what happens in the backend. It will go to each of the value. You got what? So you got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, something like this, right? Means what you got? Only the keys. So the value between before the colon you got it, right? So by default, dictionaries will have that. Due to that, so when you are getting a sum also, you get only the keys and you get the result of the keys. So explicitly, if you do also, the same thing happens. Implicitly also, the same thing happens. So if let's say I'm doing like this, dot keys, in that case also I get like this. Similarly, if I want to do the summation of values, so what do you mean by values? Values means in this case A, B, C, D, right? So if I do, it is throwing an error. It is saying, hey, I cannot add like this because the default value it is trying to add is the thing. So as like you cannot add these values to it, you are not doing. Means when you don't give any value, by default it will add to 0 only. So what if I give like an empty string? Even if I give empty string also, it cannot add. Means if you want to add numbers only, so numbers we have some built-in function. But if you want to add strings, means like so in fact, the dot values means what? So you get like this only, right? If I convert to, like a list, you can understand. You convert a list to, for you to understand, you get A, B, C, D. If you want to join them, so there is a better way of doing. There is something called as delimiter dot join, right? So for strings, we call join for concatenation. If I do like this, it will work. So if I do like whatever way, be it a list or a tuple or a set or even dictionary also, it will work in the same lines. Only for strings to add, we have a delimiter.join. In other case, we can use some built-in function. Now we have these things. And this some built-in function, so one more thing we can do. Earlier I didn't tell. If I tell like, so have a list of values, that's what you have seen till now. 1, 2, 3 I have. And if I want to add maybe like some offset, it is doing, right? So what if I have some of a list of lists if you have, or a list of tuples, or whatsoever you have, you can do it. Means if let's say I have a list, within that I have a list, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If I have something like this, you see, list of lists. If you want to add them, so what it says, I cannot add a list to a integer, right? So because the default value, you remember, so the default value it will add offset, I told, right? That is the number we are giving till now. So if you don't give any number, it is a 0. Instead, if I give a list, did you see now it is adding? In the same lines, say if I have some data, which is like a list of the same thing, which like a list of tuples. Then I give like an empty tuple, then it will execute. Similarly, so you cannot try with a set. Hope you remember. For set, we cannot do a plus operation. You remember? So for set and dictionary, we cannot do plus operation. So that's why if we do for this like a set, empty set we do like this, right? Not braces. So set doesn't support operations. I cannot add these values to the thing. So, but for these things, it will work. But it expects everything to be uniform. Say, if I have something like, loosely, say like within that I have 5 and 6, which are not so list, individual elements I have. In that case, these things cannot work. In those cases, you need to write your own logic. Maybe that is an assignment for you. So to write function to add all these. Okay. In this case, how to add, you can do. So you have like couple of more assignments for you, I can tell. So you can write a similar function using sum. Likes that sum, you can write your own function which can do these things. So you can add all those values. And the second thing which I gave, right? So when you have the values like asymmetrically, then also it should do. That's very interesting. You can do it. So there are new built-in functions called as ease instance and all these things, which can help you better way. Give it a try. If you have any doubt, please ask me, I will tell. But like in this case, you are seeing ease instance for the first time, right? So I will tell you. So first of all, what is this ease instance? If you want to check the type of anything, that's where it will help. If I say type is a built-in function, till now you know. If I give type of 1, it says integer. So type of int means what? It's of type. So that's very crazy. Means like if you are getting any number, so let's say number 1 is equal to say 12. We know it is an integer. We want to check whether it is an integer or not. Then what you will check? A type of number 1 is int or not. Then it is saying true, right? For some things it's okay. But when you go for complex, so for int you can write, float you can write. You are going for a custom data types. Then you cannot write every time, right? So you can write for int. You can write for like, so is it like a float? You can check like it's a float. So over a period of time, things will not be that easy. Because these are built-in functions, you did it. Int, float, so and so. But down the line, it would be difficult. In those cases, we can go for checking any data type. We can check ease instance. Ease instance, if I say 123, is it an integer? So 12.3, is it an float, like that? So not only this ease instance can help you better. Of course, you don't know how to write a class. Say like I have my class and I'm doing a pass. Assume that, So I have like I1 is a instance of this class. Now I can check like, is instance of this I1, is it part of this my class? Not just like checking a type of a thing. I told like, so if you do, it will work. If you are checking in an ordinary way, so what I can check? Say type of, say I1 is, can I take like, type of this thing? So like that we do. This is something will look awkward. So this is perfectly for that. Is instance. So it's easy for you to do. Okay, this is how I showed you one more built-in function. So like this, after that, so you understood now functions, how to pass the values, how to get the values and all these things. Next, one interesting point you learn is about function overwriting problem. So there are two things called as overloading and overwriting. Python doesn't support overloading. So what do you mean by overloading? So overloading means what? How it works, I will tell you. If I say number 1 is equal to 10, then I told like, the same number 1 is equal to 23. Now, if I print, hey, what is number 1? Now tell me what will happen. Will I get 10 or 23? Obviously 23. Because the latest value will override the previous value, right? So will overwrite previous value. right? That's what. The same thing happens in Python also. So overwriting happens. In which case and which context? Let me define a case one. Like I have two functions called as with the same definition. So in the same function name, three variables, you are doing operation. Same definition, two variables, you are doing an operation. Now, when you make a function call, so I try to do with both. So two variables also I do, three also I do. First I define and I pass it two arguments. It worked. So if I try to do with the three arguments, then you will notice that it will fail. Why? Because so when first you define, then again you define. So don't you see the same way? Whichever is latest, it is storing like that. That's why when you give three arguments, it don't know. Only it has that two arguments definition only. So this is called as overwriting. The latest one will overwrite the previous value. That's hope you understood. This is called as overwriting. Whereas in C language and C++ and Java, if you define like this, when you pass to two arguments, it will go to the two arguments function. If you pass three arguments, it will go to three arguments function. That's why there, so overloading is there. Whereas in Python, there is no overloading. So only overwriting of functions is there. Now, let me execute the same example in a reverse direction. Say first, like in the first case, what I did, first three arguments definition, then two arguments definition. So in the same fashion here, if you see, if I pass two arguments definition, then three arguments definition. Now we see here, which are is latest? Here we have the three arguments as the latest, right? So that's the reason. If I pass addition of three arguments, 10, 20, 30, it will work. Whereas if I do the same addition of 10, 20, two arguments, it will throw an error. Hey, I'm missing the argument. Now, did you all understand? So whichever is latest, the latest will overwrite. Overwriting. Okay. Now, in this
And
particular, yes, please.
yeah. So when in practical way, when we are using this type of overwriting, like if we have to change the function value or something like that.
So basically, this is not a good idea to do. You should not have two functions with the same name. So we don't. That should not be happening. So
Oh,
whenever you're doing, so be aware that accidentally when you're doing two functions with same name, it will overwrite. If you want both the
okay.
functionalities, so which are like two separate functionalities, then write different names. But to answer your question, if let's say you have two functions, so in this
Mm-hmm.
particular case, what you have, so when you give two arguments also, you want to do same addition. When you want three arguments also, you want to do same addition. Means in this particular case, the logic is same, but it should help for both two arguments and three arguments. In
Okay,
that kind
got
of case, we have one thing called as default arguments. So this is a solution for that problem. So in this
it.
particular case, what we have seen, so in both the cases, we have the same inner logic. If you have different logics, give different names. But as you have same definition, for one of them, so instead of defining the two arguments, you mute it. And in the three arguments case, you make the one of them as a default. So default should be in last positions. Means either you can make all as defaults or like one or two among them as defaults. But if you mark them, so the default should be every time at the last. If you make the defaults in the starting, that will throw in error. So this is one extra thing you need to be note. Okay.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
default should every time be at the last. Now in this example, I can say, so print of f of functions. So I have now function with two arguments also it will work, and function with three arguments also it will work. Did you see? This is a solution. So
Okay.
whereas if I pass the same function, same addition with like one argument, just like 10 I passed. then it will throw an argument. So if you want that also to be done, so what is the best way? You can define and one more argument also as 0. So why I'm marking every time as 0? Because if you add to 0 also, it makes no difference, right? That's what I did. But if you want like an offset, like in the previous case, you can add some kind of offset. So you see in this case, when you pass 2 arguments or 3 arguments, it worked, right?
Yes.
One more example. You define like, hello world, right? Hello world function you did. Hello world. So if I say hello world is there, if I just say, I will get like hello world. But if you give like a name, say hello is a function again, say it is returning, or like printing, say like hello world you have. So whatsoever I have, it will print it. Okay, what are the name I give? Print it. For this function, if I pass like hello of say some name, maybe like if I say Uday, it will work. But if I say hello, if I don't give any argument, it will throw in error. So what if I want to make it as a default? So using default definition means what? You need to give something. Say like if I don't give anything, it should say like world. So in this case, observe, if I do hello Uday, and this time like I don't give any argument, in both the cases it works, right? It's not just integers. You can have anything for that matter. So similarly, like I have a statement creator. I am passing like 3 arguments where 2 are defaults. First one is name, age, and qualification. So I am doing something like this. So after doing, I printed. Now in this case, see here, when I pass like no arguments, it will fail because in this case, observe in the definition, how many mandatory arguments are there? How many other arguments are there? You can observe. Mandatorily, you need to pass 1 argument, right?
Yes.
So others we may or may not pass. So if I pass like, without any arguments, then it will throw in error. As you define like this, at least you need to pass 1 argument. Means like, in both the ways I
Name.
can pass. Like call by position also I can pass, call by name also. If you don't give also, it will work. If you give also, it will work. But at the same time, someone of you may ask me, sir, I will give only 1 argument, but instead of name, I will give as age. Then what will be the value of name? Somewhere you should pass, right? If you don't pass, it will not work. So mandatory arguments, it expects the value to be passed in some way or the other. If you pass it, only then it will work. See, if I'm passing like 1 arguments or 2 arguments or 3 arguments, in all the ways it will work now. You see in this example, what I did? I passed 1 argument, next I passed 2 arguments, next I passed 3 arguments. And the lastly, I just passed a number. And of course, Python doesn't matter like what data type you passed. If the logically inside it works, it's fine. Inside if it's throwing error, it's up to you. But whatever you pass, it will give. You see, 28's age is 24 something is here. Of course, that is again another problem. For that, there is another thing called as typings to address it. But did you understand how you are addressing these problems?
Yes.
So for everything you understood. In the same fashion, there is one more thing called as DAR. For any object I told there is a DAR, right? DAR is a built-in function which will give the list of attributes of all the things it has. So if I say there is one more thing here called as defaults. For this built-in, this function, if I ask, hey, what are the defaults? Did you see it is saying what are the defaults you have defined? What defaults you have defined, everything you are getting. So fine. The next most important point is in the defaults is that there is a something called as memory leakage. This is something like, anti-pattern. Most of the interview questions they will ask on this. So it's about like, when you are working on these kind of things, you should be aware. So now till now you understood how to create a default value and all these things. So let's say you have a list, and if you are given like two arguments, say like they say you have a list and you want to extend it. Means when a value was given, you want to add the value to that list and you want to extend. Say like my list dot say append of value. So you want to return the my list. So this is one function you have. Simple function. If you are giving a value, it will extend it, right? That's it, right? I am calling it as an anti-pattern. Why I'm calling it anti-pattern, I will tell you shortly. So before going further, so I will do a debugging. Means whenever you pass a value, so I'm getting the address location of this list and also the values, and then I am appending and giving the result. Okay, I created a function now. Now I need to make a function call. So say like for the first case, I'm making a function call. I'm extending 123 and empty list. Then what will happen? So I will get like 123, right? Okay, address location is something and I'm getting 123. So next, if I pass the same thing like one more time, so this time like second time, I'm passing only one value. Means you are not giving the list. So it is make using of the existing list. So in the third case, also I will do the same way. Let me get the output and see. And in the third case, I try to do, you see, now observe all of them in one shot. So whatever comes, it will try to add, right? In the first case, you gave the default also some empty list I give. So as I give an empty list, it is giving a address location, and for that empty list, it is adding. In the second case, you passing 10. You didn't give the list. So whichever is defined in the starting when the function was created, that it is taking. So it added the value as 10 to it. Fine. In the third case also, you didn't pass any second argument. The default is list again. So it made use of the function list which was created during definition and did it. So this is the leakage issue. I repeat again. So till now, what you are expecting? Every time you are supposed to get a empty list, and value should be added to that if you don't give. But if you give any list, it should add to that, right? That's what your expectation. When you gave a list, it add to that. But when you didn't give, for the first time, it added to the new list. But subsequently, what you expect? Every time you should create a new list and add when you don't give. But it won't work like that. Only during the definition, it will create and every time use it. So that's the reason, see here address location and here address location both are same. Whereas here it is different. Because here you are, before, during the function call itself, you are creating a list and you are passing. Whereas in other two cases, so it is making use of the function, so list which was created during definition. So this is the main problem here. If you ask the address locations of all these three together in one shot, you can notice it. So I gave some numbers randomly, but like see here, the first address location is different from the other two. See, other two are same. If you see, this one is also same address location. This one is also same address location. Then what is the solution to this problem? So you take, when this is called as a leakage problem or called as anti-pattern. There are many anti-patterns like this. Anti-pattern means a pattern which we should not do. If you do, there's a problem will happen. Whenever you want to take something like a list, when the user didn't give, instead of defining the list here, you define here as a none. None means immutable, fine. And here, so if my list is none, you check like that and then define list is equal to empty. If you just do this small change, the same problem again you can execute and check. So there won't be any leakage. This leakage happens only when you have a immutable objects as a default values. If you do execute right now, you can observe in the first case 123 individually, second case empty list and 10. So third case empty list it takes and adds an A. And address locations are all three different, right? So whatever you give, so you will get the same address location. So three specific address locations it has. So what I want to tell you is that you can use defaults, but when you are using, ensure don't use the mutable objects as defaults. Hope it's clear. So next thing. So next one is about functions. Now you understood about one argument, two argument, three arguments, any number of arguments. You are slowly seeing, right? 2, 3, 4, 5 like that. What if you want to define a function which can accept any number of arguments? Those are called as variadic functions. This is kind of a relatively new concept, but I don't think that it is something very new for you. Hope you remember from the starting day you are using a built-in function called as print. Print function, if you pass any number of arguments, any data types, or if you don't pass any value also, it will work. Hope you remember. If you pass any number of arguments and no arguments also, it works, right? This is called as a good example of a variadic function. A function which should be ready to accept any number of arguments is called as a variadic function. If you want to facilitate that, so we need to make a function, say like function addition of, instead of like multiple number 1, number 2, number 3 like that, place a star and you say numbers. That's it, one shot. If you define like numbers and you try to print the values, you can see that. Say in the function definition, as I define star numbers, so whenever I am passing the values, it will give like that. You see, I define the function, and similarly, I need to make a function calls. Observe in this case, I passing just like this. Observe, till now, so I don't have a star before it. Whenever it was like number 1, number 2, number 3, it is a fixed values. Only 2 you can pass, only 3 you can pass like that. But if you want to take any number of arguments, you can do like this. In which cases you want to do, maybe like you want to pass more lists, more values, or we don't know like how many values you want to pass to the functions. You'll have a lot of examples like that. Say like if you want to create a function similar to what is there like a print, means what are the arguments you are getting, you want to take everyone and print it, right? So like that, if you want to create also, you can do. So you just define like star args. Star args means, you see, every time what are the data type is like tuple, right? Did you see? When you don't pass any values also, it's a tuple. When you pass one value, it's a tuple. Two values, three values, any values, it's a tuple. And the same way here also, see here, how many arguments you pass, every time it's a tuple and you get the results. And you are looping over it and doing some logic. Or like, so if you are given something, so you want to, so this is one more example. What are time if you want to print? So there is some logic, simple logic. So date time is one of the module. So if you do datetime.datetime, and so we will discuss about this. Every time before printing, you want to state a statement and say. So it's like a log, right? You are printing the log at which this particular print statement printed. Then actually you are printing the values, log and so and so. Means like if you want to do some customizations. So any function, if it is need to take any number of arguments, that's where you go with this one. But so in which cases it's more useful means whenever like so you want to take more amount of values. But one problem is there here. For this entire function, you pass anything. But I cannot tell, can I take like this?